Automate and Power BI integration demonstration. You often see Power Apps and Power Automate implemented together, with Power BI implemented separately solely for reporting purposes, but we're going to integrate all three here. There we go. I'm Chris Johnson, Practice Director of App Modernization. I have over 20 years of industry experience, largely in software development and also in software and data architecture. I also have over 10 years of experience with Microsoft CRM, since CRM 4 actually, through Dynamics 365 and now what is known as the Power Platform. Sharon.
My name's Sharon Wallace, and I'm an accountant for a long time, over 30 years. In the last 6 years, I've been working with both Dynamics 365 CRM and the Power Platform, as well as Power BI. I spend most of my days these days with Power BI. I'm certified with both Power Apps, Dynamics 365, and Power BI.
Thank you, Sharon. Melvin.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? Melvin Luch. I'm a software engineer here at 3Cloud. I'm Microsoft Certified Developer Associate for Power Apps and Dynamics 365, and also certified for Power BI, spending a majority of my time on the Power Apps side now.
Thank you, Melvin. Caleb, you're up.
Hey, I'm Calebino. I have just over 3 years experience developing training content for the Power Platform. I'm also certified in Power Apps.
All right, great. Thank you, team. Today's demonstration is going to include a Power App, which provides management of a product catalog and unit prices, management of row-level security RLS data hosted in a Dataverse repository, Power Automate approval workflow, the generation of an RLS audit report PDF via Power Automate, as well as the main event, bi-directional capabilities of a Power App embedded into a Power BI report. So with that, we'll get started here, Melvin, and I'll hand it over to you and make you the presenter. It looks like you are. Okay, perfect. Melvin, are you muted?
That I was. Thank you, Chris.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
All right, so we did provide slides for everybody to follow along with, but I am going to do a live demonstration of everything in the app, but you'll have the slides there for your reference later as well. So for our use case, we have created an app starting from data, and we're using Microsoft Dataverse to store our product catalog. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Dataverse, which was until recently referred to as the Common Data Service, it's a generalized, customizable enterprise relational database built on Azure. And in our case, we're using custom tables to store our data, for which we've configured a number of custom columns, choices, and relationships. And each of those components may be customized through a user interface, which keeps with the overarching low-code, no-code principles of Power Platform.
And if I could chime in there, Melvin, for those that are familiar with Dynamics and CRM, this goes way back. The early version of the entities that you would see in the CRM has evolved, and so largely the table schemas are the same and have been for many years. But it's that evolution of the CRM entities through CRM, through Dynamics, to Melvin's point, the Common Data Service or Common Data Model, and now what has been recently been rebranded is Dataverse.
Yep, perfect. So I did go back and open just one of our main views, these tables. So again, if you're familiar with Dataverse / Dynamics 365, you'll recognize a lot of these tables as default or out-of-the-box tables, but we also have custom tables that we've put in there as well. And so we also have the ability to extend that with choices, data flows, custom connectors for our internal APIs, external APIs, etc. So plenty of extensibility there. So like I said, we've chosen Dataverse as our backend, even over other offerings, including other Microsoft Cloud offerings, for several reasons. It's the most optimized data store for read-write update actions for Power Apps. It easily integrates with our Power App front end, allowing us to bind data to controls, to forms, and easily save and update records stored in the database. So as a cloud database in Power Platform, the resources have the closest physical proximity to our app. So there are no firewalls, no on-premises data gateways, no latency for differing data store regions, just as a few examples. And Dataverse is included with Power Apps licenses and is managed in our company's tenant, where we can have both production and sandbox instances for CI/CD or continuous integration, continuous delivery. We're able to migrate change sets between those environments. And additionally, for the Power Apps developers at 3Cloud, we're able to co-develop applications and collaborate on the releases as well. So Dataverse is fully auditable. So for example, user record changes, user record deletions, and it's also compliant with data encrypted at rest and in transit. And then finally, Dataverse has highly configurable security. So it allows management of access by user or team ownership from an individual level all the way up to organization-wide access per table. And that includes read, write, delete privileges, as well as sharing privileges and numerous other privileges across the Power Platform offerings. So,
and Melvin, before you move on to from the Dataverse here, I was going to ask, going back a little bit earlier, you had mentioned the performance, and I recall a customer we were working with where they wanted us to use their on-premises SQL Server, and at the initial implementation, it took, per my memory, 20 seconds in some cases for the data to be rendered. But you did your due diligence and came up with the Dataverse solution, which reduced it, again, I think, per my recollection, 5 seconds or less. Is that right?
absolutely. Yep. So we took an approach. So again, on-premises system. So we're going through a data gateway through their VPN to connect to this data from Power Apps. So we were waiting for that period of data exchange for quite a long time, and we were also losing out on a lot of our query delegation. So the ability for Power Apps to execute the queries through the source system. So we staged that data in Dataverse, and we're able to reduce calls sometimes from the 15 to 20 second range to the 1 to 5 second range for equivalent calls. So much greater improvement for application performance, especially since we had quite a number of calls that we were making back and forth to that database to initialize that cache.
Excellent. Thank you, Melvin.
Perfect. Yep. So at the moment, I'm in our product pricing tool solution in Dataverse. This is a container that allows us to group and migrate all the components relevant to our app. And I'm going to filter this so that in our current view, we'll just take a look at the custom tables that we have available to us. So this is the data model that drives the application. So of course, we have our products table, the products type, which has a one-to-many relationship cardinality to products. We have a product pricing history, which has a many-to-one relationship cardinality to products. Our product team members, which is related to product types with a many-to-many cardinality. Now we do that through our product mapping table. And this last table acts as a bridge table between the sales team and the product types that they are able to access. So when I open this, we can see that we have record lookups to both of the related tables. So I'm going to go over here to this data tab, and we'll have this pointing to team members. So these are record lookups that we can access there, and for the product type side as well. So essentially this table is where we manage our row level security, which we'll see in the last part of the demonstration once we turn it over to Sharon for the data/pricing analyst perspective. So next, I'm going to actually navigate into the application. In this case, I'm accessing the app from an administrative perspective. So I'll open the app through a unique link in my browser, though it also have the ability to access this app from the Power Apps mobile application on my mobile devices. So our app is presented in a landscape view. since we're optimizing it for use in the browser, though we can accommodate other form factors as well, namely the mobile form factor, make mobile applications, tablet-specific applications. And now that we're on the main screen, we can check out the personalized menu that's available to me, where I can view data from the custom tables and complete tasks for managing our product catalog in a variety of ways. And that's including a price feedback loop for our downstream sales data using Power BI, the ability to manually update product access by modifying the mapping table for our RLS, the use of Power Automate flows to automate tasks executed from within the app, etc. And again, as an administrator, I have personalized access to the app from this perspective. So we can see the menu items here for all of my screens and tasks. I'll have quite a few more screens available to me to use than a user, for example. So I can view the products and product types in their respective screens. I can view all of our sales team members' access to product types across the organization and in the check user product access screen. And I can also manually make changes to the user access to product types from the manage product access screen. I can also see the view my product access screen. Now this is typically a user table, but this is a tool for our users to request access to new product types. So I can indeed go in there and execute those flows and check out what they see as well. And finally, we have screens for additional administrative functions that I use to complete tasks and settings that I can use to personalize my app. So go back and start with the product screen here. So when I open the screen, a data grid showing the product details loads, and we'll also see an action bar at the bottom with several actions for our users to use. So the first item to note here is the refresh button. In order to decrease network traffic and calls, we'll typically make a call to our data source and cache the result on screen load. So when we loaded this screen, there was a quick loading action. We can also put in spinners or kind of icons to identify that we're waiting on that call to return. That way the user has an improved experience. They're not just waiting forever for a large table to load, etc. So if the user makes changes or needs to see another user's changes to the records, for example, they can refresh this cache manually, or we can tell the app to execute a refresh after an action's been completed. So we'll have the ability here as well to make internal comments for our sales team to use. So I'm going to select one of the laptops. I'll do the Apple laptop. And I'm going to add a note that a sale is upcoming for our sales team. And so you'll see after adding the comment, the refresh button was automatically selected. So the cache in this data grid is updated, and it'll be fresh data if I leave and return to the screen. So we're specifically targeting the refresh control after our action is executed. And this allows us to minimize the areas that need updated if something in our process changes. So finally, we provide the users the ability to update the list price if they see the need for a price adjustment. So again, that'll bring up a dialog. They'll be able to enter a new price and use that to adjust the list price. So we'll go back to our screen, and then we're going to look at the manual process for managing our row level security. So we'll go into the check user product access screen. Now, I'm really interested in the products that Sharon is able to see, as she'll need to access several product types to help her complete her job as a pricing analyst. So in the gallery to the left, we'll find Sharon, which will show us exactly what types she's assigned to in the data grid once we select her. We'll see that she has access to any products within appliances, TV and home theaters, cell phones, and then you'll also see back in our action bar that I have the ability to add and remove, excuse me, all right, that I have the ability to add or remove additional types from these assignments. So this is, again, the manual row level security adjustment that we mentioned earlier. So I'm going to click add in the action bar, and this will take us over to the edit product access screen. So we've taken some of the context from our last screen. So as you can see, Sharon is pre-selected in our team member dropdown, and we can verify that we've also selected her correct UPN, which is essential to our row level security implementation. And then lastly, we'll select the product type that we'd like to give her access to. So when I click the drop down, you'll see a pre-filtered list of product types that we can select from. We've implemented some basic validation here that compiles Sharon's current assignments, removes them from the list of all the available product types to prevent making duplicate entries in our mapping table. So I'll select computers and tablets from the list for her. And you'll see that in the gallery to the right, it opens a list of products that she'll now have access to. And that allows me to visually verify that she'll have everything she needs. So after clicking submit, we'll go back to the manage product access screen. And we'll see that after completing that action, my view was updated. So it used that refresh button and let us see the most recent entry in there. So again, this is part of passing the context back from the edit to the manage screen, and we can just automatically select that cache. So we'll head back out to the main menu. And now we're going to test the tool that the users will use to make my job as an administrator easier for managing the row level security. So I'll take us to the flow first. I'm going to start from the flow, detail the components of the flow, and then we'll come back and actually execute that flow and watch it run in real time from Power Automate. So this is our row level security access request flow. This is in Power Automate, and as you can see, it's an instantly triggered approval flow. So we're using the Power Apps trigger here, which we call from the app as a data connection from a controller, a button in the app. And then next up, we have our approval action. So these approvals are installed into the environment solutions on the configuration of the first flow that uses them. They are free to use, and we can configure several different approval types, like wait for all responses, wait for just the first response, or customize the response there as well. In this case, I've used the first to respond, and I've assigned the flow to myself as the administrator. The approvals can also be broken up with the start approval action at one point in the flow and the wait for response action further downstream. And I think it's important to note that the approvals do not time out by default, but that we can configure a timeout in the settings here. So you'll see that I chose a duration, a period of 1 day for the timeout. So after that period, the request expires and the flow will be canceled at this point and take the failure route there. And then you may also be asking where the approvals go once we hit this step. It's a great question with an easy answer, and because there are quite a few places that we get the approvals. So the approver will see and have the ability to complete their requests in emails. The email is connected to that request, allowing them to complete the approval right from that email. If they're using the Power Automate mobile app, they'll get a push notification where they can view and complete the request on their mobile device. And finally, they'll receive a notification in their team's activity feed. So the next part here, you may notice that we're referencing the Power Apps connector in our flow. So this Power Apps trigger allows us to capture data in real time from the app, which we can splice in as needed for the subsequent actions. For example, here, capturing the product type details or capturing the requester's identity to pipe into our flow. So next, we have a conditional action based on the approval's outcome property. So if the request is approved, we'll proceed to the channel on the left. And we'll see a for each loop here, as there could potentially be multiple responses per request, though in our case, we know this is limited to a single response. So within this loop, we send an email notification for the requester, letting them know that access has been granted. And after that, we'll see the final action, Dataverse action for create a row, which automates the creation of a new entry in the mapping table. So in this action, I'm specifying the table to target and supplying the context from Power Apps, including the product type record and the team member record, both of which we're capturing from Power Apps and specifically stating the ID for this action to use. So we'll see our table name, product type, and the team members here, as well as we create a custom name for organization purposes and looking those up. So we're going to go back to the application and see how that looks from the user perspective. So we'll click View My Product Access screen, and I'll be able to see in the gallery on the left that the data is filtered, so I'm only able to view my own access. And in the right, I see the data grid of items that are available to me, and I can choose an item from within this list and use the details action to check what products are available to me within that. So when I click details, we'll see that I'm navigated back to the view product screen. This time it is shortened and filtered to just those products that are in the product type that I selected. So we'll go back to this access page, and then we'll see another action for request access. On the administrator screen, we see our add or remove actions, but for a user, they're not able to directly modify their records in any way. Once I click this, we'll see a dialog pop up. And so we'll be able to verify my UPN and select a product type to request access to. And we just want to note again that we're only seeing items that I do not already have access to. So in this case, these 5 product types. So I'm going to select cameras, camcorders, and drones from this, and then I'm going to click Submit to initiate the request. And we'll head back over to Flow to watch this happen in real time. So back in our Flow management screen, again, we're seeing RLS access request. We'll refresh these runs, the run history, and then we'll see our flow running right at the top. As soon as Power Apps, Power Platform cooperates,
Gotta love the live demo. That's when the Power Platform slows down.
absolutely. All right, full page refresh this time rather than our compartmentalized view refresh. Seems to work a little bit better. So we'll click into our most recent run here. So Flow is running, and I already got my desktop notification for Teams. So we'll take a look at where this is standing. All right, so we have our Power Apps trigger initialized, and then we're waiting on start and wait for an approval. So this is just waiting for us to go over to Teams. So I'm on the approvals tab right now, but we can also go to the activity feed, and we'll see that I have sent myself a request. Now, of course, I'm requesting this, so I'm going to approve this for myself. We're able to add additional comments. This is especially useful for the rejection. We can let the user know exactly why they didn't receive their access, and that sends it in an alternative email when we take the no route on the conditional. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this, and we'll come back to the run history. We see this response come back. It tells me who approved, what response type, my outcome, and gives us some information, some additional properties that we can use. So when we click into the condition, we see that my outcome as approved evaluated to true. I've sent myself an email notification. And then I've also updated this product mapping table. So when we come back to the app, we're going to see on refresh of the view then I now have cameras, camcorders, and drones. And this allows us to automate this process without manually intervening and manually editing that table. So a user can request this access, and as an administrator, I don't even have to open the app. I can just approve this right from Teams, from my email, etc. So back to the main screen, and I'm going to go into administrative functions, see what's available to me here. And of course, I have a huge list for this demo. So from this list of functions, we can see that I have the ability to create or print an RLS audit report. And so this is a report that we submit to our IT team periodically as a snapshot of which team members have access to which products. And once I click run, another Power Automate flow will be triggered, and I'm going to hand it off to Caleb to show that flow off. So thanks a lot, and Caleb, over to you. I actually think I might be stealing Chris's thunder. I actually think we're gonna pause for questions.
I was going to say we would normally pause for questions, but from a time perspective, I think we may be a little bit tight here. So let's just move on to Caleb. Keep dropping the questions in. I am reviewing them. I'll answer one just because I know it off the top of my head. Does Dataverse support recursive relationships? So if you're referring to hierarchical data and self-referencing entities, yes, it does. And after the webinar, we can include a link to some documentation there.
All right, thank you, Chris. Go ahead and start presenting here.
But yes, any other questions for Melvin, please drop them in the box there.
I can't seem to find myself on the presenter list. Can someone hand that to me?
Let's see.
You should already be presenter.
Yeah, it looks like you're presenter. Yep.
Hand off.
Oh, it was hidden behind a window. My bad.
No problem.
All right. So when Melvin hits that run flow button, and we'll get an email, it'll actually be an email with an attachment, a PDF that looks something like this. And we'll go ahead and break down the flow that generates this PDF. So in here, this is our flow. It looks a little long, but I promise it's not too complicated. So we have our Power Apps trigger here. It's how Melvin can hit a button in Power App and actually trigger a flow. And then we have these three initialized variables here. These are sort of what drive the app and what get it started. And they're also a good practice to do because it keeps everything sort of together, especially when we get into like CSS and HTML where we're gonna have a lot of moving parts potentially in a flow, and this will keep everything together. So whenever we start troubleshooting, we can easily go to one spot and find it instead of looking for all these small little pieces. So we'll go ahead and break this down. So our first action here is the logo, which is a small string that I totally hand coded myself.
Of course you did. Basic
Yes.
is your second language, right?
Yep. Came out knowing that one. So this logo is just a quick URI encoding that does this one little logo here, but we'll see in the HTML action where that comes into play. Our CSS is all stored in one variable, so we can easily go find our CSS and not have to look through a separate file or the code, the HTML code itself. So we store all our CSS here, and then our HTML variable here. You can see between our style tags, we put our CSS, and at the start of our body, where our logo should be, we put our var logo here and an image tag. But also, one thing you may notice about this HTML, I don't know how hard it may see this text, but this HTML is not complete. As you see here, we always start HTML with an HTML tag, and well, we're not closing it out, but also where we should be closing out the HTML, we can see we have an open body tag here which is not closed. And the reason for that is that we're going to build on top of this HTML file before we convert it to PDF. And we start doing that with this append to string variable. Now everything is stored as a string in a string variable. So we're just going to keep appending onto the HTML variable and sort of build down on top of it. So we start our table here and we specify our 3 columns here with our table header tags here. As you can see here, there's 3: team member, product type, and created on. And if I jump back over to our PDF that was created and emailed to me, this correlates with what we see here, team member, product type, and created on. And then I quickly go out to the Dataverse and get all the records and list them. So this will be one of the tables that Melvin showed. And then we start looping over those records because we want to build a table and print that out. So we loop over that and we do another append to string. And again, if you remember, we just appended the start of a table. So now we need to start looping over and get all of our rows. So we're looping over the Dataverse, essentially converting the Dataverse to HTML here. Looping over that, and when that loop is done, we append again, and we do one of our closing tags. We close this out with a table tag. And then here's our closing tag for the body HTML that I mentioned above, and again, just appending onto it. So we've closed out the file with our HTML tag and our body tag, so now we can start the converting process. So we go ahead and create this file in OneDrive. I have a folder and I'll show you what one of those files look like. We go ahead and name the file, and then for the file content, you can see we're putting in the var HTML. We're just putting in that singular variable because we just appended all the string to it, so it's a complete HTML file at this point. And jumping over to OneDrive here, you can see some of our tests here. But if we go down, these are all .html files, and we click on one of these. That's just a simple HTML web page. And going down a step, we're then converting this file. And for the file property, we're putting in the ID, the dynamic content ID from our create file, so we can get the very specific file we just created. Or we're setting the target type to PDF because, well, that's our target. And well, just quickly, we won't see this PDF stored in OneDrive anywhere, just because that's sort of how this works in Flow. Unless we specify it to save somewhere, we won't see it. Well, when we created the file HTML, and that's why we see it, it's converting. While it's converting, it's sort of stored in sort of a limbo state until we.
It's more in memory. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, something like that.
It's dynamic in nature and not writing to the file system.
Right. But
got it.
In our send email action here, we're sort of doing that. We're sort of taking that out of memory and actually doing something with it here in the attachment right here. So we're specifying our file name, which can be one of the dynamic contents from the convert file or the create file. They should have the same name since we're using the same file. And we're attaching the content. And this file content should come from our convert file because that's our PDF. So this will all run, and we get our end result that I showed at the start, which is this.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Caleb. And if anyone has questions for Caleb, I know they're coming in. There are questions coming in. We will get back to those after a pause here. At the end, we do have some time to review those. If there's anything that we cannot answer on the webinar, we'll do our best to follow up afterwards and get you those answers. So it looks like it's time for the main event. So Sharon, the stage is yours.
And you can see my screen, yes?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So for this part of the demo, I want to take on the role of a pricing analyst. And I'm a pricing analyst, and as Melvin showed you, I don't have access to all the product types, and that is actually connected to this Power BI reporting through row level security where we're actually accessing exactly the same table that they access in the Power App, that mapping, that product map, or yeah, the mapping table. And so the result is I only have the 3 product types. And my job as a pricing analyst is, you can really see it in this lower right corner, is to figure out a way that these 3 product types aren't impacting revenue negatively by $1.2 million. Big nut, right? That's pretty ugly. And so I know that that is the overall revenue impact, and I can look at the chart right above it and see that the worst contributors are definitely TV and home theater and appliances, and that in fact, I know it's a little bit hard to see. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you. There is a dotted line there that actually cell phones is actually reducing my my negative revenue impact. So I need to really take a look at these two, and I can do that a couple of ways in this report. First of all, I can see a single product type by just clicking. I can click in either the matrix down here, or I can click in this this bar chart. If I just click one of these, everything's going to adjust. So clearly TV and home theater is a big contributor here. And if I want to see the products that are a problem, I can see them again in 2 places. I can drill in here, and those are the products, or I can actually expand this matrix out, and then I can click one product at a time, and I can see the impact of each product, right? And so obviously, when I look at the entire product type as one, my biggest problem is there are 2 products: home theater system with subwoofer and UHD TV. So what I want to do is I want to change those prices, and I could now open the Power App. However, I don't have to, because the developer of this report embedded the Power App into my report set, which is super cool. So now I can just come out here, and you'll notice that row level security stuff is really working, because I don't have all of the choices that Melvin had. I have limited choices. So what I want to do is I just want to go change those 2 prices. I want to go out and I want to go to TV and home theater, and then I'm going to go look at the details there, and I'm just going to change. I'm going to change UHD. I'm going to update that price to be. I'm going to update that price to be 14. Let's call it 14. Oh, let's call it. Oh, so I'm a pricing analyst, so I know the power of 9. So 1449.99.
The psychological benefit.
And then I'm also going to change this one, which if I do that, you can see this is the right product. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to change this one to 2249.99. And I'm going to submit those. And then I'm going to go back to my report so that I can see the impact of that. So when I go back here, I'm going to have to click the refresh button because we changed the data. So I'm going to just click refresh.
And that's only because this is not a direct query implementation. Is that right, Sharon?
Correct. This is not a direct query, because I know a lot of you are Power BI developers. There are some pretty severe limitations to a direct query, and we needed to have an import here. So when I refresh that, I can see that the refresh didn't happen. Let's try that again. Oh, of course. So this is like Murphy's Law of demos. Yeah. So I've been working on this all week long, and it refreshes in seconds, and right now it's just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. So I promise you, it really does bring in the right data, and then you but it's
Let's
really still spinning. So
let's
actually, why don't we do this? Let me
let's take a
show you.
pause. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna say
let me
if you
show
want
you
to, Sharon.
behind the curtain a little bit.
Okay.
So what I want to show you now is this is Power BI Desktop. And so this is a really great viz, and it's not a custom viz. It's one that's going to be in Power BI Desktop for you. It's called Power Apps for Power BI, and when you drop it, it's going to ask you for Power Apps data, and what happens, this is like the magic part. So what happens in this part of the field, well, let me make it bigger so you can see it. In this part of the field, well, you can drop any column or any measure from your reporting data model. And what ends up happening is once you publish this out to the Power BI service, it will actually create a new data source inside the Power App. And this is exactly how this particular measure is, I'll show it to you. It's a very simple measure that just equates the user to the user principal name so that the Power App knows who the user is so that it can do that filtering. And okay, so let me make, and so that's just a really cool way that it interacts. And man, I'm so disappointed because I'm not making up stories. This was actually refreshing in milliseconds, and it's still spinning. So
Do we want to maybe pause and answer some of the questions that are coming in while
that's a great idea.
while
Oh
Power
wait,
BI is doing its thing?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to scroll up here, start at the beginning. Okay, I answered about the recursive relationships. I hope that answer was sufficient. I see here in the Power App, when you add access to a person, will the access data be updated in the database table immediately, or will it be cached? And Melvin, I believe you're writing directly to the Dataverse table real time. Is that correct?
That is correct, but that also allows us to point out that we can configure these apps to cache that data to be used offline, for example. So if you have guys in the field that are using these to submit reports or follow-ups or invoices, et cetera, we can cache that within the app and submit it at a later time using the local storage. But in this case, and what we demoed, that was all live connect. Direct right to the database.
Excellent. Can Power Apps initiate a stored procedure in a SQL database? Melvin, I'll ask you on that one.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's pretty straightforward.
Yep, it is straightforward. We're going to go through Power Automate in that case. So Power Automate has a SQL DB connector, and we can use that to directly initiate a stored procedure. We can, of course, supply some parameters for that. And we've also done configurations with that SQL connector where we've selected a specific type of stored procedures or maybe a batch of stored procedures and iterated over that list of stored procedures, supplying it parameters. So not just one, but even the case for multiple stored procedures.
So a very dynamic implementation there.
Correct. Yeah, we're going for dynamic and reusable. Just easy implementation there.
Okay, it looks like we have a question here just confirming that the data is being stored in Dataverse. Yeah, so if the question is, what is Dataverse? You may have missed the part earlier where we were talking about common data model, common data service, Dataverse, all kind of linking back to Dynamics and Microsoft CRM. So hopefully that answers your question. But yes, it is Dataverse. It's the new name that Microsoft gave for that technology. And can you create a template with company logo, color scheme, and fonts? I know you did something. I don't know how robust the capabilities are within Power Apps, But Melvin, I know for certain you built a very nice template for a customer. Actually, I think there were 2 companies using the same app, something along those lines. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep. So we can create templates. We can create reusable components, blank apps, and we can also parameterize something like company colors, background logos, etc. So we've done that before as well, and publish the app. So from one working copy of the app, publish to multiple copies of the app, one for each company, for example.
Okay, next up, can you expand the Power Apps trigger? I don't know if in the screenshots, Melvin, did you include an expanded version of the trigger?
So if we expand the Power Apps trigger, I'm actually just going to read what it says right out of the trigger. It says no additional information is needed for this step. You will be able to use the outputs in the subsequent steps. So it's simply that. It's just a trigger action, so an instantaneous trigger. And then when we get to the apps below, maybe I can send a screenshot after this. You're able to select that in your add dynamic content, and so it'll name that appropriately based on wherever you put that reference.
Gotcha, thank you. Someone was not seeing the variables. I'm hoping that did become visible. I think this was maybe during Caleb's piece. I know he did eventually expand those variables. So I think that's Lewis. If you did not end up seeing those, please submit the question again. Can Power Apps import an Excel spreadsheet and transform and load it? I don't know that we've had a request to use Excel as the data source. Again, I'm assuming because it's Microsoft that there is a connector for Power Apps to connect to Excel. Anything you know off the top of your head, either Caleb or Melvin?
Yeah, we can connect to Excel, and we can read in directly from Excel, and we can even edit the Excel tables. We typically don't recommend that, but sometimes we do need that. I think we could even configure that to kind of load the data and then write that to database, maybe as a write that to the Dataverse database as kind of a pass through, or maybe like a bulk upload process. So I think even that would be a possibility that we might be able to recommend there.
Yeah, we're big fans of Dataverse, so we always push for, even if the data is somewhere else. So if you have an opportunity to use Dataverse, that's our recommendation based on your licensing and other restrictions of your specific solution. The next question is just basically confirming that the video will be available to watch again, and yes, it is being recorded. Is it possible to change the columns data based on the user that is logged into the page? So that sounds like personalization within the Power App, which absolutely it does support. And Melvin, I know you've done a ton of. So between icons, specific areas of the application, to individual components being visible, not visible. We actually had one customer that requested, instead of what could have been many apps for licensing purposes and just usability within their environment, they asked for one Power App, which then we added an immense amount of personalization to ensure that folks within certain security groups are only seeing what they should. Did I summarize that well, Melvin?
Yep, and we'll also reiterate on some of the changing the columns data. Basically, what we would call that previously is that field level security, right? If we want to obscure maybe social security numbers, credit scores, et cetera, that are stored within the app based on your role. And we can even read in your Active Directory security groups with the AD connector as well, so.
Someone mentioned maybe the data wasn't saved whenever you went out to the app. Sharon, I just wanted to confirm that when you went out to the app that the information was persisted. That's
It was, and the refresh finally ran. It was just I think it was just a glitch in service. So on your screen now you can see it. It ran. So my pricing changes actually showed up.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for all the outstanding questions so far. Feeding those in was very timely.
One more that I definitely want to touch on here. I think I answered this via text, but I just wanted to point out: are the applications accessibility compliant? Yes, they are. Yeah, we're able to add tab stops, alt text, and we're able to put in text for screen readers as well. So yep, all accessibility, all good to go.
Okay, excellent. So Sharon, if you wouldn't mind, could you share your screen one more time?
Well, sure.
Wanted to lock in. So it was the list price as well as was there anywhere else on the interface that represented that change from a graphical representation?
Yeah, so if we go to, if we just click on one of those that I changed, the revenue impact went way, way down when I changed the price on each of the ones that I changed, right?
Excellent.
Because those were
There
really
we go.
great big, those are big holes.
Those were big numbers, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent, thank you very much. Do we have more questions, Melvin, that are not answered?
Yes, and there's definitely one that I want to touch on because we're highly recommending Dataverse. So, is there a disadvantage to using SharePoint lists as a data source versus Dataverse? Will it get slower if I get above a certain amount of records? I'm not quite sure about the overall performance when we get up there with SharePoint, but I do know that Dataverse supports in the hundreds of thousands of records sometimes.
SharePoint lists do have a 5,000 record limitation within the interface that I'm familiar with. So it may work if you build an app against it. I personally have developed an application using lists that had more than 5,000, but it was not accessible via SharePoint itself at that point. It was only via API. So definitely something you want to take into consideration.
Perfect. I will say that in the application, there's typically a record return limit of about 2,000 records. When we're going past that, we typically go for like a paging solution, something like that. And then just the other thing that makes it more difficult is SharePoint data types. You need explicit mapping in some cases. Sometimes you need to use OData data types, etc. Your mapping and as far as the binding goes, the binding from Dataverse to your Power App is 1-to-1. So no data type mapping in most cases, unless you're specifically redirecting a user through a maybe like an option set to a text field or something like that. But overall, easier data mapping and easier data binding there. Highly recommend Dataverse for the capacity as well over SharePoint.
I would also like to add on to that one that SharePoint also has a lot of issues with delegation inside Power Apps, which can stop a lot of quick solutions and end up, you're working how to solve a simple problem like how to have multiple drop downs to filter a gallery, and one of them needs to be blank. That one can be a pain.
Thank you, Caleb.
There are a couple of quick Power BI questions. So the first question is, can you use this report optimized for PBI reporting server? You definitely can, no problem. And then the other question had to do with the row level security. And I just wanted to show you in my data model, this model is actually, it's just a representation of the same model that Melvin created. And what we have this product mapping table, which is really just a bridge table between the product type and the product team member. And then when it comes to the row level security, it's very, very simple. It's simply one simple query on the product team members table. And it's that simple with that bridge table.
Here's another one that's really interesting. How can we implement the write back option? And in a way, that's what we've done. Power BI does not inherently have that write back capability, but by creating a Power App and embedding it within the report, we did manipulate the data without leaving Power BI. So we were in Power BI, we just used our embedded application to modify the data and then implemented in this case, we just refreshed because it was not direct query. But it's basically a simulated write back. That's how I'm perceiving it.
Right. It's really just an iframe, but it's a configurable the viz makes it very configurable. And it's just, I mean, it's super brilliant turning the and I didn't come up with it myself. One of my clients actually conceived it for me. And so it was, it's just really brilliant to be able to turn a reporting set into a two-way communication device.
Awesome. Thank you, Sharon. And I think we're basically at time here. So I'm not going to bother pulling up the last slide on my side. But basically, in summary here, we've demonstrated Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power BI all within one solution here. I hope this was, we've demonstrated some of the passion we have for the Power Platform. We really love it. So if you'd like to know more or work with 3Cloud on anything Azure-based, whether it's Power Platform, custom development, data warehousing, even IaaS, things like that, we handle it all. Please contact us at 3cloudsolutions.com. Otherwise, in the handouts, you will see the slides, which includes the contact information for all of the presenters here today. So you can feel free to reach out to us directly with any clarifying questions. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, thank you so much, Chris. And like Chris has already stated, yes, please download the handouts. They are there. If you guys need us for any reason, please reach out to us. We're always here. Thank you guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful Tuesday. Chris, Sharon, Caleb, Melvin, thank you guys so much for hosting. We greatly appreciate it. I know some people were asking about the recording. You guys will receive the recording tomorrow in your email box around noon Eastern Standard Time. If you guys can't find it there, you can always go to our YouTube channel under 3Cloud. Under our free webinars, you guys can see all of our past webinars there as well. Again, I hope you guys have a good rest of your Tuesday. You guys, thanks so much for hosting, and I'll see you guys in the next webinar.
Yep, thank you all. Bye-bye.